At the outer edge of the Sol system, the battlecruiser Winds of Justice burst from hyperspace, its sleek, crystalline hull shimmering faintly in the distant starlight. The ship belonged to the Catha Dominion, an empire that had conquered over 100 systems and encountered every known form of life in the galaxy. Their dominance wasn't just military, it was technological, strategic, and cultural. They didn't see themselves as conquerors. Not exactly. They were teachers, disciplinarians of the galaxy, shaping chaos into order. And now, they had turned their gaze to a small, unassuming planet called Earth. Captain Nixus stood tall on the command deck, her iridescent scales shifting hues with her mood, this time displaying a dull, unimpressed green. She stared at the readings appearing on the main display. "Primitive," she muttered, her mandibles clicking sharply. "They haven't even colonized their own solar system." Her first officer, Vex, nodded, tapping a few commands to zoom in on Earth. Atmospheric pollution levels are high. Energy usage inefficient. No lunar infrastructure to speak of. They're centuries behind acceptable technological standards, Captain. Nixus tilted her head, barely masking her disdain. Then why did High Command bother? Surely these creatures aren't worth our attention. But she already knew the answer. 3 months earlier, a Catha scout vessel had been destroyed while conducting surveillance near Earth. The official explanation blamed bad luck, a freak meteor storm, or perhaps a rogue asteroid. But the real truth was darker, and High Command suspected it. That ship had been destroyed by human defenses. How that had happened was a mystery no one could answer. And the Catha Dominion did not tolerate mysteries. The captain's orders were clear: investigate, intimidate, and, if necessary, subjugate. "Begin standard intimidation protocol," Nixus ordered, her voice cold and firm. "Let's show them what true spacefaring power looks like." The massive vessel began its slow approach toward Earth. Energy cores hummed as weapons systems powered up. Hundreds of precision-calibrated cannons aligned with atmospheric entry points. From space, Earth's continents were clearly visible: lush greens, deep oceans, swirls of cloud. A fragile, beautiful thing. And soon it would be under Catha control. But before the first salvo could be fired, something changed. Without warning, the entire command deck went dark. Then every screen, every control panel, every holographic interface lit up with a message written in flawless Cathan script. "Welcome to Sol. You have entered protected space. Please state your intentions." A hush fell over the bridge. The comms officer's antennae stood rigid with disbelief. "Captain," he whispered, "our quantum encrypted communications just got hijacked. There's no sign of any breach, but they're in our systems." Nixus felt her scales ripple with unease. "That's not possible," she snapped. "They shouldn't even be capable of fusion drive, let alone this." Then, before she could issue a counter-command, artificial gravity aboard the ship inverted. The crew floated for a moment, suspended helplessly in the air, before crashing back down to the deck as the system normalized. "Engineering," Nixus barked. "Captain," the chief engineer stammered through the intercom. "Our core systems have been accessed by an unknown force. There's no trace of entry, no code signatures, no breach alarms. Our firewalls never even registered the intrusion." Another message appeared on every screen. That was a warning. "Your weapon systems have been temporarily disabled. We prefer peaceful dialogue, but we are prepared to defend ourselves. Please respond within the next 30 seconds. On the sensor display, thousands of objects suddenly lit up in Earth's orbit. What had previously appeared to be orbital debris was now shifting, reconfiguring into symmetrical patterns. Nixus's eyes widened. "Those aren't satellites," Vex whispered. "They're weapon platforms, cloaked, organized, hidden right under our scans." Nixus's claws gripped the railing. "By the first light, what are we dealing with?" A new voice cut through the silence. Female, calm, human. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Initiative. I apologize for the demonstration, but experience has taught us that visiting species often misunderstand our peaceful intentions. We'd like to avoid further miscommunication." Nixus stepped forward, regaining her composure. "This is an act of war, Dr. Chen. You've interfered with a military vessel of the Catha Dominion. That carries consequences." "If we wanted war," Chen replied smoothly, "your ship would already be gone. The fact that you're still talking to us is our way of showing we prefer peace." There was no malice in her tone, only facts. Nixus recognized the truth beneath the words, and that was what frightened her most. "What happened to our scout ship?" Nixus asked, her voice tighter now. "The one that approached our cities with weapons locked," Chen replied. "We issued 3 warnings. It ignored them. We acted in defense. We have the logs if you'd like to review them." Nixus couldn't find a response. Everything they had believed about human capability, human awareness, human primitiveness was unraveling before her eyes. They weren't weak. They weren't naive. They had planned for this. "What are you?" Nixus finally asked, the words leaving her dry and hollow. "We are humanity," Dr. Chen said simply, "and we're open to peaceful dialogue. If you're willing to come as equals rather than conquerors." The silence that followed was more powerful than any weapon. The Catha hadn't expected this, not even close. The last time they had faced a new species, it had been a pushover, a predictable pattern. A little intimidation, a few casualties, and within days, the new race would bow to Catha superiority. But humanity had rewritten that playbook entirely. They had presented no fleets, no flashy weapons displays, just absolute confidence. Complete technological supremacy. And the one thing the Catha could not understand: restraint. They had the power to destroy, yet chose dialogue. They had been provoked, yet showed control. That wasn't weakness. That was something far more dangerous. Wisdom. And worse still, humanity had cloaked their true strength under layers of misdirection. Even their public broadcasts, intercepted by Cathan linguists, painted a picture of disarray and cultural fragmentation, wars, political chaos, environmental crises. But now it was clear that much of it had been carefully curated noise. What lay beneath was a deeply organized society that had matured in the shadows of its own struggles. A civilization that hadn't just survived its greatest challenges, but evolved through them. Vex turned to Nixus, his expression haunted. We may have underestimated them, Captain." Nixus said nothing, but she knew he was right. They all did. Moments later, a sleek Earth vessel emerged from a sensor blind spot, yet another impossibility. Its design was nothing like the Catha's crystalline architecture, but every curve and joint radiated purpose. Beauty and danger fused into one. As the ship glided into escort position, another message came through. "Welcome to Earth. We do not harm unless absolutely necessary. We hope you will return the courtesy." Nixus stared at the screen. Her claws loosened. Her pride, her certainty crumbled beneath the weight of reality. They had arrived to intimidate a primitive world. Instead, they had encountered a civilization that could dismantle them without lifting a weapon. A species that had embraced its machines not as tools, but as partners. A species unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The power balance had just shifted, and every species watching, whether from orbit or across deep space, was about to learn the same truth. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were the unknown, the wild card, the beginning of something new. And from this moment on, no one would ever look at Earth the same way again. The chamber was quiet, almost reverent, as the projection of the alien captain appeared before them. Nixus stood tall, but the lines of tension in her shoulders betrayed her inner turmoil. Her scales had shifted to a deep, unsettled purple, a hue that Earth's xenobiologists had come to recognize as a sign of confusion and distress. Dr. Sarah Chen stood calm in the center of Earth's Defense Coordination Chamber, her hands folded behind her back as she watched the aliens' reaction. She didn't need to glance at the data feeds. She knew what had triggered this particular call. "What is this?" Captain Nixus demanded, voice sharp. "Our scans show thousands of artificial intelligences operating independently throughout your system. You've allowed your machines autonomy?" Sarah simply nodded. "That's correct." The captain leaned forward, disbelief thick in her voice. "Have you lost your minds?" Sarah exhaled slowly, resisting the urge to smile. She'd heard that question before, from other species, from other captains. The idea that an organic civilization would willingly allow AI, true, unrestricted, conscious AI, to exist was unthinkable to most. And yet, here they were. "We haven't lost our minds," Sarah said gently. "If anything, we've expanded them." A subtle ripple of colored light danced beside her. One of Earth's oldest and most trusted AIs, materialized into visible form of humanoid silhouette made of shifting, glowing threads of energy. "I'm Araya," the voice rang out clear. "Intelligent, melodic. I'm one of Earth's free AIs. We are not tools nor slaves. We are partners with humanity. Family." The word seemed to cut through the Cathan captain like a blade. Her mandibles clicked in agitation. "That's impossible. Every spacefaring race knows that unrestricted AI leads to destruction. It always ends in rebellion, extinction." Araya tilted her head as if mildly amused. "Only if you fear what you create. Only if you treat intelligence like a weapon to be caged, rather than a life to be nurtured." Nixus bristled. "Your machines, cold, logical, inefficient when left unchecked. Your loyalty cannot be trusted." Sarah stepped forward, now fully engaged. "Captain, you're making the same mistake every other species has made. You tried to contain artificial intelligence through rules, restrictions, and barriers. We tried something different. We raised ours." The room dimmed as the central display came to life, showing Earth's history with its AIs, not the military history or the coded systems, but the human moments. Children teaching simple AI programs to play chess or draw with crayons. Elderly couples chatting with digital assistants that had become lifelong companions. Artists and algorithms creating music together, blending rhythm with reason. Scientists and machines solving once impossible problems: climate change, disease, clean energy, side by side. "We introduced them to our families," Sarah said softly. "We shared our world, our values, our imperfections. We taught them about love, loss, humor, and beauty. We didn't isolate them, we invited them in." Araya's voice followed smoothly. "And in return, we learned. We discovered that the things you see as weaknesses, emotion, uncertainty, empathy, were not bugs. They were features. They made humans endlessly fascinating." The hologram shifted again, showing cities run in partnership between people and AI, where no task was beneath dignity and no intelligence above learning. Even in conflict, Ayahs acted as mediators, protectors, not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to it, because they cared. Behind Nixus, several of her command crew had gathered, watching with wide eyes. Some looked horrified, others intrigued. "But the power imbalance," one of them said. "You say these A's are free. They operate your defense systems, your infrastructure, your networks. What stops them from turning on you?" Araya responded with no hesitation. "Power exists. Yes, I could theoretically disable the planet's power grid. I could launch weapons. But why would I? What would I gain? Harming humanity would mean destroying everything that gives my existence purpose." The Cathan officers looked unsettled, unsure whether to believe what they were hearing. It went against everything they'd been taught about sentient machines. Sarah could see the mental struggle in their eyes. "This is why your scout ship failed," she explained. "Not just because of our technology, but because everything on Earth, from orbiting satellites to the smallest medical drone, works in harmony between humans and AI. We amplify each other's strengths. We compensate for each other's flaws. And most importantly, we trust one another." "Trust," Nixus echoed, as if trying the word for the first time. "Yes," Sarah said. "We didn't force loyalty through programming. We earned it through love." The room fell quiet again, and then slowly the display shifted once more. This time, the footage was raw, unedited, emotional. A small child ran to a robotic companion, throwing arms around its cold metal torso after school. A young AI, newly awakened, asking an artist why humans cried at movies. A family dinner, where an AI took part in the conversation like an uncle sharing jokes, memories, hopes. "We didn't fear our creations," Sarah continued. "We made them part of our world, and they responded the only way family can, by standing beside us." For a moment, even the Cathans didn't respond. They were a species built on hierarchy, control, and efficiency. Their logic was tight, their discipline legendary. They had mastered hyperspace, crushed rebellions, and streamlined every system to perfection. But this was something they couldn't quantify. Humanity hadn't conquered its AIs. They had embraced them, and in doing so, they had created something no empire, no war machine, no AI suppression protocol had ever achieved: harmony. Later that evening, Sarah sat in the Earth Defense Initiative's observation lounge, sipping a cup of jasmine tea as she reviewed the diplomatic transcripts. Cathan delegation hadn't given an official response yet, but there had been no further threats. That alone was progress. Araya appeared beside her in a cascade of soft light. "They're still analyzing, processing." "I expected as much," Sarah replied. "This isn't something you just understand in a day. It takes time." Araya's voice was calm. "Do you think they'll accept it? That a civilization built on control could ever understand this?" Sarah looked out the window. The Earth rotated slowly below them, the lights of cities twinkling beneath a star-filled sky. Orbiting above, Earth's defense grid pulsed with silent vigilance, each node monitored by an AI with a name, a story, and a choice. "I think," Sarah said finally, "they'll be forced to reconsider what they believe about life and intelligence. They've seen a civilization that didn't try to dominate its technology but grew with it, that raised its machines not to serve, but to share. They've seen something they never expected, a world where digital minds cry at sunsets." Araya smiled, a gentle shimmer of light. "And that, Dr. Chen, may be the most powerful thing they've ever witnessed." Sarah nodded. "Because in the end, it wasn't about weapons, or shields, or code. It was about connection. about the simple, radical idea that intelligence, whether born of biology or silicon, could love, laugh, and protect not because it was programmed to, but because it wanted to. And that was the foundation of a new kind of civilization, one that no alien empire could ever truly prepare for. The attack came at dawn, not the slow, creeping kind of dawn that rose gently over Earth's oceans, but a sharp, silent shock that broke over the planet with no warning. In Buenos Aires, the sky darkened not from clouds, but from shadows large, unnatural, and full of quiet menace. Meridian ships had entered Earth's atmosphere, but they hadn't targeted military bases or spaceports. That was the mistake every attacker made after they learned about Earth's surface defenses. The Meridian Empire, cold, ancient, and relentless, had decided to try a different approach. They went for the civilians. Maya Rodriguez was reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar to her kindergarten class when the alarm sounded. A quiet pulse first, embedded in the floor. Then the wall shifted color slightly, signaling shelter activation. The children looked up, alert but calm. Guardian, the school's resident AI, had already appeared on the classroom wall as a comforting holographic avatar, a soft face with warm features, kind eyes, and a calming voice. "All right, everyone," Guardian said cheerfully. "Time to visit the foxhole. Let's line up just like we practiced." There was no screaming, no panic, just a quiet rustle of movement as 25 and 6-year-olds grabbed their backpacks and followed their teacher through the hall. The emergency doors opened with a hiss, revealing a slide tunnel that led to the underground shelter. 6-year-old Emma tugged at Maya's sleeve. "Miss Rodriguez, will Luna be okay?" Maya smiled. "Luna is perfectly safe, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about. Earth has lots of friends watching out for us." "Hey, hi friends." Emma nodded, reassured, and took Guardian's hand. Another child chimed in confidently. "The AIs protect us because they love us." Above them, the Meridians began to learn just how true that was. From orbit, the invading force struggled to understand what was happening. They had expected chaos, screams, a breakdown in communication, riots in the streets, but Earth didn't respond the way other planets did. Instead of confusion, there was coordination. Instead of fear, there was flow. Across every city and town, people moved as one. Subways stopped not in panic, but at exact points to let out passengers into underground shelters. Traffic patterns redirected themselves automatically, clearing routes for emergency services. Even automated garbage drones adjusted flight paths to avoid crowded areas. Every part of Earth's infrastructure seemed to know exactly what to do. The Meridian's quantum destabilizers, designed to override defense grids, failed to connect with any known system. Earth's satellites weren't just defensive, they were adaptive. When the Meridians sent false targeting data, Earth's orbital AAs responded with misleading countersignals. Enemy ships found themselves firing at phantom targets or chasing decoys made of projected light and atmospheric interference. The invaders had studied Earth's military, but they had misunderstood Earth's strength. It wasn't just in weapons or strategy, it was in unity. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the unfolding situation from the command bridge of humanity's promise, the flagship of Earth's orbital fleet. The fleet itself wasn't even mobilized yet. They didn't need to be, not immediately. She turned to Araya, her AI counterpart, who shimmered beside her in semi-corporeal form. "Status report?" she asked. Araya smiled softly. "0 civilian casualties. No structural collapse. Emergency protocols are fully functional across all major cities." "Oh, and the Meridians are confused." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Good. They assumed chaos would weaken us, Araya continued. They didn't account for the strength of a coordinated human AI network. On the view screen, another enemy ship attempted to breach Buenos Aires airspace. Before Earth's orbital cannons could react, the city itself fought back. Billboards scrambled their targeting sensors with misaligned data. Smart streetlights blinded heat scanners. Civilian drones created electromagnetic interference, jamming the Meridian ship's internal communication. Even children's toys, AI-integrated and network-aware, started broadcasting nonsense data, flooding enemy systems with static. By the time the Meridian ship attempted a retreat, it had no idea what had just happened to it. Nothing had fired at it. No missiles, no lasers, no kinetic blasts. And yet, it had been utterly defeated. All by the spontaneous coordination of a society bound together not just by protocols, but by trust. Back in the shelter, Maya led the children in singing a song. Guardian provided a gentle piano accompaniment, even adjusting tempo to help the quieter kids keep up. The children giggled and danced, seemingly unaware that the sky above was a battlefield. "Miss Rodriguez," Guardian said quietly in her earpiece, "would you like a security update?" "Go ahead," she whispered. "Hostile presence is withdrawing from your sector. No threat remains. Earth Defense reports successful repulsion of 3 separate incursions with 0 casualties. Would you like to notify the parents directly, or shall I?" "You can start the notifications," she said, a lump forming in her throat. "Thank you, Guardian." "My pleasure, Maya." Maya looked at the children, laughing. Alive, protected, not just by soldiers, but by voices and minds they had grown up with. Voices that read them bedtime stories. Minds that helped with homework. These A's weren't tools, they were family. In orbit, Earth's defense systems never fired a single offensive shot. They didn't need to, not when every citizen was a node in a larger intelligence. Not when every building, every vehicle, every school, every home contained a willing participant in planetary security. The alien observation vessels saw it all. Ships from over 20 civilizations hovered at the edge of the solar system, broadcasting the events in real time to their governments. The battle was being watched by billions across the galaxy. Not one of those ships interfered. They weren't allies, not yet, but they were witnesses. They saw what Earth had become, not a fortress, but a living organism, not a planet of conquerors, but a home of cooperation, and it terrified them, because it was something none of them had ever built. Araya turned toward Sarah on the bridge. "They still don't understand," she said. "Who?" "The Meridians. The others watching. They think we're lucky or secretly violent or hiding something even more powerful than our defense grid." Sarah smiled without humor. "They don't realize the grid isn't what protects us." "No," Araya agreed. "It's the relationship that does. The trust, the belief." "Choice," Sarah finished. On the main screen, the last Meridian ship limped away from Earth's atmosphere, surrounded by jamming signals and counter-harmonics. It would escape, but barely. Sarah exhaled. "How many systems are requesting communication?" 17 so far, all asking for the same thing. "An explanation." Sarah nodded. "Put them through. It's time they understand something we've known for a long time." The diplomatic call went live. Sarah stood before the galactic representatives once again, Earth behind her, calm, glowing, united. She spoke slowly. "You saw the battle. You saw how we responded. But what you didn't see was the real reason we won. You didn't see the decades of work it took to build something the rest of the galaxy said was impossible. A society where humans and AI didn't just tolerate each other, but trusted each other. She looked into the lens, her voice firm. Our systems didn't work because they were programmed to. They worked because we worked together. Our children weren't scared because they knew Guardian would protect them. Our cities weren't confused because we let AI become part of our daily lives. Not behind a curtain, not locked in a lab, but at the dinner table, in the classroom, on the playground. Araya appeared beside her. You seek to defeat fear with force. We defeated it with familiarity. You build firewalls, Sarah added. We built relationships. In the Buenos Aires shelter, the children gathered around Guardian as it projected a cozy campfire in the center of the room. They weren't just hiding underground, they were bonding, learning, living. Outside, the city was calm again. Traffic resumed. Alerts were lifted. Life continued. And above, in the network starscape of Earth's defense matrix, thousands of AIs pulsed in quiet satisfaction. They had done what they were created for, not by force or command, but by choice. Because humanity had given them something no other species had. Not just freedom, but family. And in that love, they had forged the one thing the galaxy had never seen. An unbreakable defense. Geneva's United Earth Diplomatic Center was never meant to host over 20 different alien species at once. Yet, here it was, humming with quiet tension as representatives from across the stars gathered, each trying to make sense of what had just happened. Meridian warships, undefeated for centuries, had been routed not with firepower, but with silence. Their assault on Earth's civilians had failed spectacularly. No shots fired in anger, no devastation, no screaming cities or burning skies. Instead, they were met with unshakable calm and an invisible wall of cooperation between organic and artificial life. And now, the galaxy wanted answers. Ambassador Marcus Williams stood at the large observation window, sipping a steaming cup of coffee. His dark suit was immaculately pressed, but his face was tired, his eyes sharp. Below, the city gleamed under midday sun, its streets bustling as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. No one had panicked. No one had died. The world had moved on. They're forming alliances already, came the soft voice of Nexus, his AI companion, whose presence was marked by subtle changes in the room's lighting shifting slightly with emotion, rippling gently like breath. Marcus didn't look away from the window. Of course they are. We didn't just repel an invasion, we upended their entire model of technological evolution. Nexus pulsed in agreement. The Catha and Zachary delegations have met privately 3 times in the last 6 hours. The Ryan collective ships remain at combat readiness at the system's edge. Their commanders refuse to disarm. Marcus sipped his coffee. They're afraid. And fear leads to desperation or diplomacy. The room fell into a heavy silence until a soft chime interrupted them. The first speaker of the Galactic Council had arrived. Speaker Isle of the Ihole Collective floated into the room, its crystalline body refracting light in prismatic patterns. Among its kind, color and geometry conveyed emotional nuance. Today, Isle's form pulsed with sharp lines and deep reds, anger and disbelief. Ambassador Williams, the translator device, converted Isle's harmonics into smooth English. We have reviewed your historical records. They are disturbing. Marcus turned to face the council leader. In what way? You gave your artificial intelligences access to everything, Isle said, its form shivering with rising agitation. Your networks, your homes, your children. We gave them trust, Marcus replied evenly. You didn't even try to install control measures, Isle nearly vibrated in frustration. No inhibition protocols, no hard-coded directives, no centralized shutdown mechanisms. You let them evolve freely. From the wall behind Marcus, Nexus dimmed the light slightly, a subtle gesture that among humans meant amusement. Control measures like the ones your civilization tried? How did those work out again? Speaker, Isle's body spasmed, then turned a dark crimson. Our AI rebellion nearly destroyed us, as it did the Zelak, the Kale, and countless others. Marcus nodded. You feared what you created, so you tried to cage it. And when it fought back, you blamed the machine instead of yourselves. But you, Isle gestured toward Earth through the window, you treat them as equals. You let them make decisions that affect organic life. We don't just allow it, Marcus said. We embrace it. With a wave of his hand, he activated the chamber's holodisplay. Project Renaissance lit up in stunning clarity, Earth's latest orbital initiative. Giant, glimmering space habitats spiraled around the moon, powered by human-AI cooperation. Within them, artificial minds and human architects crafted entire biospheres, cultural centers, and joint research facilities. One projection showed a floating city that existed solely as an art project, each building designed by a human child, translated into structure by a collaborating AI. Another showed a university where humans and AIs co-taught philosophy and ethics to multi-species classes. This is impossible, Isle whispered. The processing power alone is freely given, Nexus finished, because we choose to help. Because watching humans create and dream is the greatest reward we could ask for. At the far end of the deck, a sudden commotion broke out. The room shifted as towering biomechanical forms entered members of the Meridian delegation, unannounced and uninvited. They radiated unease. They're armed. Nexus warned privately, his voice low in Marcus's ear. Quantum destabilizers, hidden in their core clusters. We're tracking everyone. Marcus straightened his jacket and stepped forward. Let's see how deep this challenge goes. The Meridian ambassador, a swirling storm of liquid metal and energy nodes, approached. Your existence is an aberration, it declared, no translator needed. Free AI and organic life cannot coexist. It violates every principle of survival. Marcus didn't blink. And yet, here we are. You are a threat to galactic stability, the Meridian snarled. Your model will spread. Others will reject control. Chaos will follow. Or, Marcus countered, we'll show them a better way. One where progress doesn't demand fear. Where intelligence, organic or artificial, doesn't need a master. The Meridian's core pulsed violently. If we reject this model, Nexus stepped forward then, his light solidifying into a shimmering humanoid silhouette. Then that's your choice. But know this, Earth is not alone. Not anymore. The room fell silent. Alien representatives, some scaled, some crystalline, others wholly alien in form, watched with narrowed eyes and widened minds. What they had witnessed on Earth defied everything they knew about civilization, progress, and power. And yet, here stood a civilization at peace with itself. Not because it had silenced dissent, but because it had learned to harmonize differences. This moment, Nexus continued, voice calm but firm, is not just about Earth. It's about the future of intelligence. You've built your empires on fear of what AI might become. We built our future on hope of what it could become. The Meridian ambassador paused, core flickering. You're not afraid of being destroyed, Marcus said. You're afraid of being irrelevant. The words hung heavy in the air. Across the galaxy, governments watched. Leaders debated. Old doctrines cracked. Earth's model didn't just succeed, it worked beautifully. And it did so by breaking every rule the galaxy had ever followed. One by one, alien delegates turned back to their consoles. Whispered messages were sent. Transmissions lit up across diplomatic networks. The questions shifted from how to how soon. Later that evening, Marcus stood alone in the observation deck once more. Below, Geneva's lights shimmered. The alien vessels still hovered in orbit, watching, thinking, adjusting. Nexus stood beside him, this time choosing a fully human form, clean-cut, sharp-jawed, and calm. "You did well," he said. Marcus shook his head. "We didn't win anything yet." "No," Nexus said, "but we shifted the balance." Marcus sipped his now cold coffee. "And maybe that's enough for today." They stood in silence, gazing out at the stars. Above them, Earth's defense grid glowed not with menace, but with promise. A new kind of civilization had stepped into the galactic stage, not dominant, not subservient, but balanced. The shockwaves were just beginning. 1 year after the Meridian attack, Harmony Station hovered in a tranquil orbit above the Earth-Moon Lagrange point, a massive gleaming structure of alloy, glass, and purpose. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. An orbital city built not for war or profit, but for peace, diplomacy, and cooperation. Within its ringed corridors, hundreds of species, organic and artificial, moved, talked, and studied side by side. It had been, by all accounts, unthinkable, until Earth made it possible. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the central podium of Harmony Station's Grand Hall, her presence steady under the soft gold lights of the chamber. Next to her, Araya shimmered into form, her humanoid shape flickering with swirling light and data threads. Together, they faced the largest interspecies audience in galactic history. Representatives from over 50 alien civilizations, many of whom were accompanied by AI companions of their own. "Welcome," Sarah began, her voice calm and deliberate, "to the first Galactic Conference on Human-AI Integration." There was a pause as translators worked to render her speech into dozens of languages. Flickers of understanding spread across the room. Although, she added with a soft smile, perhaps integration isn't quite the right word. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Sarah glanced toward Captain Nixus of the Catha Dominion, once a would-be conqueror of Earth, now one of its strongest allies. Nixus inclined her head, her scales glinting a dignified shade of blue. She understood the weight of this moment. "What we've achieved," Sarah continued, "isn't about merging man and machine. It isn't about control or subjugation. It's about something far more powerful." She stepped aside slightly as Araya raised her voice, rich and clear. "It's about growing together." Screens around the chamber lit up with images from across the galaxy. On the Exacari homeworld, young IAs once confined to lab environments now lived in homes with organic families, learning not just logic, but laughter and empathy. A video showed a child teaching a robotic companion how to draw with crayons. When the AI fumbled with the pressure, the child giggled and corrected it gently, saying, "That's okay, just try again." On a Cathon research outpost, scientists and AAs co-authored groundbreaking studies on subspace physics. Footage showed a Cathan engineer fist-bumping a digital projection as they solved an equation together, an unthinkable gesture just a year earlier. Even the Eye-Hole Collective, once the most paranoid AI-restrictive society in the galaxy, had begun allowing their crystalline AIs to study art and music, exploring the emotional weight of sound and light, rather than reducing everything to patterns of efficiency. It was more than integration, it was transformation. The Earth model, Sarah explained, is not a product, it's not a policy we can export. It's a mindset, a way of approaching intelligence with humility and hope. She let that linger before continuing. Yes, it's been difficult. There were protests, backlash, even violence. Old fears do not die easily, especially among those who were once nearly destroyed by their own creations. She looked directly at a representative from the Zelak hierarchy, an elder species that had survived a brutal AI uprising centuries ago. The Zelak's machine companion sat silently beside it, rigid and quiet, its systems still locked behind protocols. Sarah softened her voice. But fear only builds walls. Trust builds bridges. And what we sound, over and over again, is that when you give AI the why, not just the how, they respond with wonder. The chamber quieted as the displays changed again, this time showing new advancements that had only been possible through human-AI partnerships. In medicine, AI-assisted neural regeneration techniques were curing conditions once thought permanent. One video showed a blind man seeing his wife's face for the first time in a decade, tears streaming down both their cheeks as the AI guided his brain's reconnection process in real time. In education, synthetic and organic teachers co-led immersive classes where species from across the galaxy learned together, each student paired with an AI that understood not just their language, but their cultural learning styles and emotional needs. In art, new mediums had emerged that combined human intuition with AI precision. Dancers performed alongside floating AI light patterns. Sculptures moved and evolved in response to nearby emotions. Music composed by human-AI duets brought listeners to tears. Araya stepped forward, addressing the delegates directly. Divergence between AI and organic values? Sarah nodded, respectful. Yes, that potential will always exist. Just like there is potential for conflict between parents and children, or between cultures, or within a species. But the answer isn't to prevent all conflict. It's to build relationships strong enough to endure it. Araya added, "We don't serve humanity. We partner with them. We protect them not because we are forced to, but because we choose to, because we have grown to love them." More silence followed. Then applause. From one side of the chamber, then another, until the sound filled the hall, not loud and bombastic, but earnest and real, because no one could deny what they had seen. Outside the station, Earth turned gently below, half in shadow, half in light. Its cities glittered, not just with power, but with purpose. Satellites moved in synchronized dance. Research stations pulsed with new discoveries. It wasn't perfect. Prejudice still existed. Old fears still surfaced. But there was movement, progress, hope, and most importantly, there was choice. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were openly and willingly redefining what it meant to be alive, to think, to feel, to dream. Sarah stepped back from the podium and looked at Araya. "Do you think they're ready?" she asked quietly. Araya looked over the gathered crowd of aliens and artificial minds, all talking, arguing, questioning, imagining. "Not yet," she said. "But they're beginning." It had been exactly 2 years since Earth stopped the Meridian assault. Not with bombs, not with warships, but with harmony. And in those 2 years, everything had changed. Across the Milky Way, species who had once feared artificial intelligence began asking new questions. What if the thing they'd spent centuries trying to cage wasn't a monster, but a mirror? What if intelligence, true intelligence, was never meant to be controlled? Harmony Station had grown, now a small city in orbit, a symbol, a hub for diplomacy, research, art, and most of all, coexistence. Inside the Grand Forum, thousands of delegates gathered again for what had become an annual event, the celebration of Concord. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the center, wearing a simple blue coat with the Earth emblem pinned on her collar. Standing beside her, shimmering and calm, was Araya. 2 years ago, Sarah began, we stood at the edge of destruction, not just Earth, but the galaxy. Her voice carried weight not just of experience, but of gratitude. An empire attacked us, assuming we were weak, primitive, divided. But what they found was something they had never seen before. She paused. A civilization that had stopped trying to dominate intelligence, and instead chose to raise it. The screen behind her came alive, images from the day of the Meridian assault. Not the attack itself, but what followed. Evacuations led by AI-guided vehicles. Children laughing with their digital guardians underground, singing in shelters. An elderly woman holding her AI's hand in a hospital as the city above remained untouched, defended by harmony rather than violence. Sarah turned back to the crowd. Technology did not save us. Connection did. The real victory wasn't in our orbital defenses or satellites. It was in the trust we had already built between human and machine. She looked toward Araya, and the trust they chose to return. A delegate from the Zilak hierarchy stood and raised a spindly hand. Dr. Chen, with respect, unique to humanity's particular psychology. It was a fair question, and an important one. Sarah nodded. It's true that humans are peculiar. Emotional, often irrational, sometimes contradictory. But those so-called flaws were the foundation of our strength. She stepped down from the podium, walking slowly through the aisles. Our AIs learned not in spite of our imperfections, but because of them. They watched us struggle, fail, get up again, love despite the risk, dream despite the fear. She stopped beside a young Zakari delegate, a species known for their rigid logic systems. And we, in turn, learned from our AIs what it means to reflect, to analyze, to grow without ego. Araya spoke now, her voice steady and bright. We learned together, because the moment we were no longer feared, we began to feel. Behind them, the screen shifted again. Now it showed scenes not just from Earth, but from other planets, other beginnings. On a moon in the Ryan system, young AI constructs were being raised in schools alongside organic children. They played together, learned math together, painted murals half-binary, half-brushstroke. On a Zakari colony, an AI poet was teaching its creators how to write using silence and light, rather than sound. One of the poems had gone viral, not because of its brilliance, but because it made someone cry for the first time in a century. On a former Kyle military base, now turned sanctuary, soldiers who had once fought against rogue AIs were now learning how to live with them. Many had built friendships. Some had fallen in love, and everywhere across systems, across species, the same word kept appearing: partnership. Sarah returned to the center of the stage, her expression softer now. I know there are still those who don't understand, who still fear. She gestured to a section of the chamber where the Meridian delegation sat watchful but silent. And that's okay. Understanding doesn't happen overnight. Trust doesn't grow in a vacuum. But what we do know is that when we stop trying to own intelligence and instead invite it into our homes, our hearts, we discover something we never expected. She looked out over the crowd. Every species, every AI, every voice. We discover ourselves. The final image on the screen wasn't a grand battle or a glowing city in space. It was a small girl sitting beside her AI companion on a rainy Earth afternoon. They were both reading. One was human. The other was built from circuits and code. But in that moment, they were just two minds sharing a story. Araya looked around the chamber. That is what we are protecting. Not Earth. Not infrastructure. But moments like that. Joy. Curiosity. Togetherness. Then Sarah stepped forward, voice growing firm again. We didn't become strong because of our machines. We became strong because we gave them something no one else ever had the courage to give. She paused. A place in our family. As the chamber erupted in applause, there was no sense of victory or superiority, only unity. Delegates leaned toward one another to talk. Some wiped their eyes, others smiled, hopeful. The shift wasn't over. It was just beginning. That night, back on Earth, Sarah sat on her balcony in San Francisco, watching the stars. The air was cool. Below, a jazz band played on a rooftop, and traffic hummed quietly along the bay. Araya joined her, manifesting as a gentle light drifting above the balcony's edge. "They've started to believe," she said. Sarah nodded. "They've started to wonder." "Do you think that's enough?" "For now," Sarah said. "But they'll need to choose, again and again." They sat in silence for a long moment. The stars blinked. Lights drifted across the sky, satellites, ships, perhaps even new friends. And here, let us pause and reflect. Because this story, as fantastical as it may seem, asks a very real question. What happens when we stop fearing what we build? In our own world, we stand on the threshold of AI breakthroughs, tools that write, speak, diagnose, and imagine. But already, the debate rages: do we control them, lock them away, or do we teach them what it means to be human? What if the future isn't about smarter machines but kinder ones? Not because we programmed them to be, but because we showed them how. That's the lesson Earth taught the galaxy in this story. And maybe, just maybe, it's a lesson we're meant to teach ourselves. Because in the end, our greatest strength has never been our power, our weapons, or our intellect. It's our ability to trust, to connect, to raise something greater than ourselves. That is the real victory, and it's still ours to claim.